It's a complicated answer because it's a multifactorial effect or influence. And I guess we know that if we have one parent that's myopic, that has a certain risk profile for the child. If we have two parents that are, that both parents are myopic, that's a higher risk profile for the child. So if I can give you an analogy as to how to process that bit of information, genetics may load the gun, but the environment and the visual behavior of the child is what pulls the trigger. So you've got to have some genetic drivers to put you at risk. But I've seen myopic children that both parents are not myopic too. So the environment plays, I think, probably as much of an influence for a lot of children than what their parents are. But if we look at what those environmental triggers are, the ones that the behaviours with the kids, we're seeing that more frequently. So we're finding kids are choosing behaviours or being educated in such a way that it increases the risk. And I think that combined with some genetic history then makes it a fairly interesting cocktail. And Tassie's a little different to the mainland because we don't have quite the density of myopia and not quite the number of people that are myopic as what some of the mainland states are dealing with, which is effectively an epidemic for them. We're a little bit insulated from it. We've got our myopic patients and we've got our children that are progressing, but not the same numbers that I hear from my colleagues in other states.
So how much of an influence does time spent outdoors play in the progression of myopia? Because I'm imagining that Tasmania is a very sort of outdoorsy kind of state, so maybe that's part of the answer there.
I think it's part of the answer, but it's not the only answer. But being outdoors is important because it gives the eye a variety of inputs and information. If I sit and read a book, I'm getting lots of information from the pages of the book, but I'm sitting still, which means most of my eye is being deprived of detail because I'm not moving. So we're sitting in a room with static walls, static couches, static backgrounds. And when we're outside, we're not normally sitting still ever. We're outside, we're walking, we're moving, we're doing things. And that gives our eyes a constantly evolving kaleidoscope of colours and patterns and detail. And I guess the analogy for parents to really grapple to is, why do we hang mobiles over change tables? We hang mobiles over change tables to give attention and detail to the child. And when we're outside, then we've got all of that attention and detail that's subconsciously being delivered to the child. We preach a mantle of green time over screen time for that reason. Right. So more outdoor time, less staring at a screen, staring at a book time.
So people have been reading text on the page for thousands of years. So, but what's suddenly different now about digital screens? And are you seeing anything now that maybe you didn't see so much 20 years ago?
I see as much myopia progression with book readers because I've got communities in Tassie that are anti-technology. They don't use tablets for children. They don't have phones for children. They don't use laptops or computers for children. So once kids get to 18, they can do that sort of stuff. But under 18, they're kept technology free effectively. Now that's an interesting concept for modern day, and nearly every one of those children is myopic.
Wow.
If some of their parents are, some aren't, but nearly every child is. And it's really interesting because what do they do if they don't have that other entertainment? Because they don't have TV, they don't have other things. They're reading. They read books copiously, and it's what I think is what we're dealing with when we're talking about phones being causative for myopia. It's not the phone per se. It's how many hours a day we're spending on the phone and our lethargy when we're using phones because we're sitting still, we're stationary, we're not moving, we're not giving ourselves enough detailed visual information.
And digital devices are kind of engineered to be addictive, aren't they? Which is probably one of the reasons why the amount of time spent in this near work has just gone up so much.
Yeah, I think it's not the devices so much. It's the social media platforms that are really addictive, and they are engineered to hold and keep your attention and not let it go. The rise of short videos and the rise of clips and reels. That's all driven by quick data absorption. So, and it's short attention spans as well. So they're trying to give people lots of stuff to keep them scrolling, to keep them looking, and how many? What's the term? Doom scrolling. So people my generation are saying, yeah, but you're doom scrolling because you're just dead to the world. You're ignoring your partner. You're ignoring your children, and you're just scrolling on social media. That's that pathway, and it lights up the same parts of the brain that drugs do. So it's certainly an addictive pathway.